So the body's natural response to inflammation is to send white blood cells, whether it's healing a scrape on your arm or trying to remove maybe some casein protein from your body, which causes you to break out with acne. Other signs of like inflammatory reactions might be farting, diarrhea, upset stomach. Those are versions of low-level inflammatory reactions, and versions of high-level inflammatory reactions being chronic diseases like Crohn's disease, gout. There's tons of modern diseases that are actually results of chronic inflammation. I would even consider certain cancers like pancreatic cancer to be a result of chronic inflammation from consuming too many high carbohydrate foods. So it's a lot of videos I make relate to kind of why I follow my diet in general. Now, the reason I follow a high vitamin carnivore diet is partly to eliminate inflammation. By consuming large amounts of vitamins, I'm increasing my body's immune system function and ability to deal with inflammation. And by removing all inflammatory foods from my diet, I am kind of eliminating that part of the problem. As you can imagine, when all inflammation is removed and your immune system is at optimal function, your body is going to function, as well as it possibly can. Now, when we talk about anti-inflammatory foods, I think, what do you mean? A food can be low in inflammation, but the only thing that would be anti-inflammatory would be suppressing your immune response to food, which is a short-term solution, but not necessarily a good thing. For example, I used to eat liver every day with butter, and by eating liver every time I had butter, I would counteract the acne I would get. If I ate liver, I didn't break out. But if I went one day without eating liver, I would start to break out and get the low-level inflammatory reaction from the butter. So, whether or not consuming, in this case, a super high vitamin food to counteract an inflammatory response is a good thing or a preventative measure, I don't really know, but it's certainly not better than just removing the butter from my diet and just not having that inflammatory response in the first place. Now, bringing that up might not have been a good idea because people think that they can consume foods like turmeric or certain spices or like cranberries, blueberries, like foods that are supposedly anti-inflammatory and high in antioxidants. The reason liver, in my case, works is because liver is very high in vitamin A, which is a vitamin used to heal tissue, and has tons of minerals and just, a bunch of other fat-soluble vitamins. So whether you're, consuming very well-done steak and maybe you're getting mucus buildup from that, or you're on a vegan diet and you fart a lot. A lot of problems that people have from a vegan diet are results of the chronic inflammation of consuming those foods. There's a big thing with Crohn's disease and long-term vegans. What do they call it? Cronies? It's kind of like the untold secret of the vegan diet, or kind of like the untold shame of the vegan diet is that most people develop Crohn's disease after being on a vegan diet for a certain period of time. Of course, a lot of people also develop candida after being on a vegan diet for a long period of time. Another result of consuming, I think it's large amounts of sugar, and are two examples of diseases from certain types of inflammation. So just to give some anecdotal example about my diet, let's say I eat just raw steak and maybe some fish roe for the day, nothing cooked, no seasoning, no anything. My digestion will be perfect. I won't, feel like I'm thirsty. I won't get any mucus buildup. My breath will smell perfectly fresh. Once I start cooking my food, adding salt to it, maybe I had some foie gras, which has an unnatural amount of omega-6. Maybe I had some coconut aminos. Maybe I put some balsamic vinegar on my steak. I'll get some, maybe even I had some cream. Maybe I'll have some slight digestive issues. Maybe I'll break out a little bit. But by no means am I... These are very low-level inflammatory responses. When we talk about just like constantly being lethargic all the time, constant brain fog, from people that are on a standard American diet, that would be an example of inflammation that people don't really notice. If you don't put yourself in the position of a minimal inflammatory diet and know what it's like to live like that, then you don't really know how bad your current diet is. I could sleep for 5 or 6 hours and I feel fresh, I feel refreshed every day, I always have constant energy. Compared to how I felt before, how much I needed to sleep, it's hard to have an example of what your life could be on actually removing inflammation if you don't have something to compare it to. You know, this is why I have a big problem with people advocating any type of diet towards people. If you haven't tried a diet or haven't tried most diets, you can't really tell people to try a certain diet. Like, I've been on a vegan diet. I've been on pretty much every goddamn diet there is. That's why I feel comfortable talking negatively about certain foods and positively about certain foods, because I have pretty much the full spectrum of anecdotal experience. You know, a lot of times I talk to vegans or I read about vegans and they talk about how great their diet is. I'm like, well, have you tried this diet? They're like, no. Okay, so you haven't tried this diet. Why should I assume that? How can you tell me your diet is better than mine if you don't have the anecdotal experience to understand how that level of inflammation feels? I think I'm getting a bit too off topic, but hopefully at least I think I covered inflammation to some degree, and just to give you guys an idea of how like broad of a term inflammation is, because it could literally mean like you cut your finger off and your body's trying to heal it versus you getting farts from eating too many beans.